In the Trump administration, there's a very clear rule: rules for thee, but not for me. And when it comes to Bill Pulte, the head of the FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, well, guess what? Bill Pulte doesn't escape the fraud allegations either. I wanted to kind of emphasize the through line of the hypocrisy because it's pretty freaking rank, because the fraud through line that happens to exist not only in Bill Pulte's family's world, but also when it comes to Trump's cabinet officials is pretty rich, considering the fact that Bill Pulte is suddenly now the mortgage fraud prosecutor, that the FHFA was never intended to occupy that space. I mean, specifically, FHFA is supposed to be looking at the soundness, the safety of a certain type of loans and loan agencies, and that's pretty much it. But Bill Pulte, I guess he decided that he wanted to be the new mortgage fraud king when it comes to prosecutions. But of course, he's only targeting Trump opponents. I'm going to say that again. It's one thing if Pulte was actually turning that lens not only on himself and his own family members and also turning it on Republican officials, but no, he's only doing it towards Trump's political opponents and political enemies, or perceived political opponents and political enemies. And that is why it's disgusting that a federal administration agent is using his position in yet another politicized, weaponized way. The irony is the GOP loves to complain about how the Biden administration, the Obama administration, how they politicize and weaponized federal agencies to be able to go after enemies. And yet that is actually a Trump specialty. And that didn't happen in the Obama and Biden administration. So let's turn first to the exclusive that came out of Reuters just a few days ago. The father and the stepmother of Bill Pulte, their names are Mark and Julie Pulte. What do? They claimed homestead exemptions in the states of Florida as well as in the state of Michigan. Now, out of the gate, I will tell you, homestead exemptions are different than mortgages. But listen, let's call a spade what it is, right? If you are talking about fraud, it's fraud. And in this instance, when you are claiming homestead exemptions on two separate properties wherein you're realizing the benefit of a lot of savings on taxes, property taxes, then maybe, again, Bill Pulte should be looking at investigating his own father and stepmother. So let's talk about this. Local tax officials told Reuters in both of those states of Florida and in Michigan that claiming more than one home as a primary residence isn't generally allowed in their respective jurisdictions and could be punishable by fines or back taxes. So when Reuters contacted Bloomfield Township in Michigan to ask about the dual claims, the director of assessment there said the township would revoke the homestead exemption on the Pulte's claimed residence there in Michigan. So wow. A official in Michigan being told about this dual claim of homestead exemption said it's not going to happen in Michigan anymore. According to real estate records and the resident who is renting out the home in Michigan, the home was rented out by the Pultes this year, and that move also violates the rules for purposes of homestead exemptions. Revised tax bills will also be issued to the Pultes, including all applicable penalty and interest. And that also is according to the director of assessment in Bloomfield Township in Michigan. Okay, so now we have a homestead exemption that was falsely claimed by the Pultes in Michigan. And now we have a renter in that home for which the homestead exemption was claimed as being the primary residence for the Pultes. Okay, but again, is Bill Pulte looking into this? No. Okay. So let's look at this. Officials in Florida said, well, the exemption, the homestead exemption that's claimed in our state is older than the one in Michigan. So you know what? Deal with it in Michigan, according to what Reuters has reported. So the irony is this. Bill Pulte has gone after Lisa Cook, who's a current governor of the Federal Reserve, claiming that she said that there were at least two properties that were her primary residence, and that constitutes mortgage fraud. In addition, he has accused her of defrauding mortgage lenders and defrauding the public. Quote, "Financial fraud is a big deal. Don't do it." And he wrote that last weekend on X, the cesspool that used to be known as Twitter. Now, here's the defamation part of this, right? He has 3 million followers on X, and he's running around claiming that Lisa Cook, Governor Cook, committed mortgage fraud and defrauding of the American public. And yet we all know what's happening here. Donald Trump is trying to get the interest rates lowered because his economy sucks. And we all know how bad it is. The latest job numbers that came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that not only is unemployment now at an all-time high, but job creations are an all-time low. Nobody's able to be getting a job, and when people are working, they're getting their asses deported from America, right? So in this instance, let's go after one of the Fed Reserve governors, because if we can kick her out, then we can put pressure and we can change the balance of that, and we can basically get the lowered interest rates that we're not getting from Jerome Powell, who's the Fed Reserve chair. Now, here's the other crazy thing, right? Bill Pulte goes after Lisa Cook, and what does he say? On X again, because of course these dumbasses in the Trump administration, they only want to do stuff on X. Pulte says, quote, Lisa Cook's declared primary residence is being rented out to tenants, end quote. Oh, that's funny. Isn't that what his father and stepmother are doing in Michigan? Didn't Reuters just interview the guy who's renting the home from the Pultes in Michigan? But again, I guess rules for thee, but not for me when you're Bill Pulte and the Trump administration. So the Reuters article actually was very clear here. They interviewed 8 tax and real estate experts who said that the homestead exemptions that were claimed by Mark and Julie Pulte would be typically permissible only in the rare exception that's made when you have a couple of spouses and they literally are living independent lives. One lives in Michigan, one lives in Florida, never the twain shall meet. Now, listen, I don't give a shit about Mark and Julie Pulte. Let me be clear. And that kind of underscores the point here, right? I don't care what the fuck they are doing. But listen, what's good for the goose is going to be good for the gander here. And if you're going to politicize an entire federal agency, you being Bill Pulte, and you're going to go after people for renting out primary residences and claiming primary residences more than twice on certain applications or documents, then you know what? Maybe you need to be able to look at your own father and stepmother for this. Because in this instance, I doubt sincerely that Mark and Julie Pulte under oath are going to say that they are living fully independent lives of each other in Michigan and in Florida. And I'm not talking they're in separate bedrooms. I'm talking they're in separate fucking states, right? Okay. So there's no mortgage records for the Michigan and Florida properties. So there's no banking institutions that are carrying mortgages for these particular properties. So what does that mean? That means that they're paying lower taxes. Not only are you paying lower taxes because of the homestead exemption claims, but they're also paying lower taxes because they don't pay the mortgages as well, right? So the lower taxes means that they're contributing less towards the public coffers, including area school funding, infrastructure, and other resources for those areas in Michigan and in Florida. According to the Reuters article, when you claim these types of homestead exemptions, they can add up to thousands of dollars of savings each year. For example, on the Florida home in Boca Raton, the exemption that the Pultes claimed saved them $158,000 in taxes in 2025. That's according to officials in the tax assessor's office in Palm Beach County, where Boca Raton is located. So, Bill Pulte's father and stepmother saved $158,000 in taxes for 2025 because they claimed improperly the property exemption, right? The homestead exemption. Now look, Florida says we were the oldest, so go to Michigan. Either way, let's say they properly got it in Florida, then they clearly didn't properly get it in Michigan. The house in Boca was bought for $4.25 million in 2016. Mark Pulte, the dad of Bill Pulte, filed the exemption request for homestead exemption. And then in 2020, they bought the house in Michigan for $1 million, and Julie Pulte claimed the homestead exemption there. But here's the thing. For the Boca house in Florida, the title is transferred to a legal entity in which both Mark and Julie Pulte are listed as beneficiaries. And in the Michigan property, both the spouses, Julie and Mark Pulte, are named on a trust that owns the house. It doesn't seem very separate to you, right? I mean, I understand that couples owning assets is one thing, but couples living fully independent lives, on its face, none of this suggests that that is happening here. So it's not just Bill Pulte's family, although I would say to you that that is one of the most rank hypocritical examples that we could think of. But also we have amazing investigative journalism from one of my favorites, ProPublica. And what do they say? Well, maybe this escaped you, but last week, at the end of the week, it was reported that there are 3 of Trump's cabinet members that are claiming multiple homes as their primary residences on mortgages. So, not only is it the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook, that is being chased by Bill Pulte and the Trump administration, but remember, they're also going after Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, and Adam Schiff, the Senator from California. For what? Claiming primary residences on multiple mortgages at the same time. Let's be clear. Legal experts have said that this idea of claiming primary residences on different mortgages is not that big of a deal. It's actually legal, but it's rarely prosecuted. And by the way, I went and I looked, okay? Mortgage fraud. Mortgage fraud, according to the Federal Sentencing Commission, in 2024, only 38 people were sentenced for mortgage fraud, and the actual number of prosecutions is even like less than you would think it's going to be. And that's really important, right? Because we want to talk about resources. We hear from the Trump administration, and we heard it with the beginning of this Doge BS, that there's no money. There's no money to be had. We have to root out fraud, waste, and abuse. And yet this is their version of rooting out fraud. And this is how they're using limited resources, is to be able to prosecute these types of alleged offenses. But I digress. So let's talk about the 3 Trump cabinet members that claim multiple homes as their primary residences on their mortgages. Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer, 2 primary residence mortgages in quick succession. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, primary residence mortgages in New Jersey and Washington, D.C. And Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, primary residence mortgage in Long Island, and another one in Washington, D.C. Bill Pulte claims on X last month, quote, "If somebody is claiming 2 primary residences, that is not appropriate. We will refer it for criminal investigation." Then he also posts on X, "Fraud will not be tolerated in President Trump's housing market." Oh, well, that's funny, because it happens to be being committed by 3 of Trump's cabinet members who, of course, all deny wrongdoing. So, as I stated, mortgage fraud, rarely prosecuted. And the example that Bill Pulte has used is this stupid case from California in 2016 that is not on all fours, meaning it is not factually related to anything happening to Lisa Cook, Adam Schiff, or Letitia James. A California woman in 2016 was found guilty of obtaining multiple loans for condos that she falsely stated would be her primary residence. She never intended to live in any of the homes. She was secretly being paid on the side because she had good credit to act as a front for the true buyer to whom they were later transferred. She later defaulted on the loans, causing more than $500,000 in losses for the lenders. Where's the damage here? Where's the injury? Are you being hurt because Lisa Cook has multiple mortgages? Are you being hurt because Adam Schiff has 2 primary residences, one in DC, one in California? What's the damages here? Lawyers told ProPublica that determining ill intent would be the key to prosecution. Fraud requires that the borrower was aware that the borrower was making a false representation in those documents. Yeah, it's a crime. Criminal intent is necessary. Did you intend to commit mortgage fraud? I'm telling you that what the Trump cabinet people say, I didn't intend on committing mortgage fraud at all. So that's okay for the Trump cabinet people. But when you hear it from the people that Trump is going after via Bill Pulte, that's not okay, according to Bill Pulte. And oh, by the way, Pamela Jo Bondi's DOJ. Very quickly here, like I said, Adam Schiff, Tish James, and Lisa Cook are being pursued right now, right? And it's not just words. I mean, there's actual DOJ investigations that are going on. But the one thing I wanted to round out this conversation with you about was to just highlight for you what probably is a reminder and a refresher. 8 pages here from Tish James' office, the New York Attorney General. Trump Organization properties and fraudulent schemes. Fraudulent, misleading values of properties and other properties. Donald Trump knows a lot about fraud. A lot, especially when it comes to real estate fraud. So just a small refresher, because again, rules for thee but not for me if you're Donald Trump. Trump Park Avenue. In July of 2020, the Trump Organization received an appraisal with a value of $84.5 million. But on the 2020 statement of financial condition, the Trump Organization valued Trump Park Avenue at $135.8 million. You know, just an additional $50 million just kind of poof, came out of the air to be put into the statement of financial condition. Here's another example. The rent-stabilized units at Trump Park Avenue. An independent bank-ordered appraisal in 2010 valued 12 rent-stabilized units at $750,000 total. Yet in the 2011 and 2012 statements of financial condition, those rent-stabilized apartments were valued at the non-regulated market rate of nearly $50 million total. $750,000 to $50 million. So here's another example. 40 Wall Street. The Trump Organization got a bank-ordered appraisal that calculated a value of the property at $220 million as of November 1st of 2012. Yet in the statement of financial condition that year and the next, 40 Wall Street was valued at $527 million and $530 million, more than twice the value that was calculated by the independent professional appraisers. Now remember, people, these statements of financial condition were used by Trump to do what? To get loans, to borrow money, to finance projects. To steal from Peter to feed Paul, right? I mean, here's the thing. Trump knows about fraud when it comes to real estate. I don't see Bill Pulte being hot to trot about looking into Trump's finances and financial issues when it comes to real estate. Trump golf and social clubs. He didn't itemize the value of each of his golf and social clubs on his statements, but instead aggregated them into one line item so that he could inflate the value of his social clubs. I'm going to drop the link for this because y'all have to check this out. Here's another one, Mar-a-Lago. The property was valued as high as $739 million based on the false premise that it was an unrestricted property and could be developed for residential use, even though Trump's own signed deeds sharply restricted any changes limiting the permissible use of the property just to a social club. And in reality, the club only generated annual revenues of less than $25 million. He values it at $739 million, and it really should have been valued closer to $75 million. That's a huge swing, don't you think? But fraud galore, fraudapalooza. The false and misleading statements of financial condition by Trump, the Trump Organization, all of those defendants that Tish James went after in that civil fraud suit. Those statements of financial condition were used to obtain and maintain favorable loans, fraud loans, applications for money to institutions. The false and misleading statements were used to obtain and maintain favorable loans over at least an 11-year period. All told, the financial benefit realized from the scheme was approximately $250 million, including interest, savings, and transaction profits. Like I said, folks, it's no rules for Trump. No rules in the Trump administration, no rules for the Trump cabinet officials, no rules for any of the Republicans, right? But when it comes to the Democrats, now suddenly there are rules galore, and we are going to prosecute them with zero consideration of lack of intent, mistake. None of those things exist, right? It's literally what we call in law strict liability. If it happens, it must be wrong. There's no room for error. Must be nice to live in that type of glass house. But we see you, Donald Trump. We also see you, Bill Pulte, another lackey. And we understand that you think that you're gaining, some type of street cred with MAGA and that you're gaining some type of favorable status with Donald Trump. And yet we see you and we're watching you and we're keeping tabs on you. And trust me, our digging isn't going to stop. Be mad, be outraged, and demand some damn accountability because we are. See you on the other side. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.